Hey, gang. Obviously, I'm not in school today. I'm sorry. If you ever want to get a broken refrigerator for 3 days and not have a refrigerator and then have to wait for a refrigerator, I highly suggest doing what I'm doing right now. Definitely worth the financial investment. Oh, and if you think about it, we did our tax lesson. Remember that? Oh, I didn't even factor that in. Okay, so now think about that I have to buy a $700 refrigerator. Okay, so now put that in my bills. All right, now that those 33 seconds were awful, here we go. You have your midterm coming up. We answered our George Washington questions. So you are able to answer the George Washington questions on the study guide. Now, I asked y'all to answer the 5 John Adams questions. We're going to go over these John Adams questions right now, and then you're going to have to work on the Thomas Jefferson questions. Thomas Jefferson is fair game for the midterm. Now, John Adams, let's look at number 1. Why do we think John Adams had a tough time as president? Well, let's think about this for a second. Yes, he was a very qualified person to be the president. He had helped write the Declaration of Independence. Since I don't have a refrigerator, I don't have any coffee cream, therefore I'm not making coffee. Adams was the vice president to George Washington. Adams was also one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence. Adams also helped, in the Revolutionary War. Adams was at the Second Continental Congress. Adams was a qualified guy, but the problem was he had to follow George Washington. How on earth do you follow the guy that fathered the country? How on earth do you follow the guy that won the Revolutionary War, attended the Second Continental Congress in military uniform, was the first president, created all of these new policies and ideas? How do you follow that? It had to be incredibly difficult. But Adams, entered the office thinking that he would be able to do a good job. Well, right off the bat, because he was not George Washington, he had it rough. He just did. He wasn't able to get the support from the people the way Washington did. He just wasn't as popular. Now, he also had a tough time during the office. Excuse me. He also had a tough time during the office because he had to inherit the things that Washington did. If you think about it, President-elect Donald Trump will become president in a month. However, the things that went on during Biden's presidency and the things that went on during Obama's presidency and Trump's early presidency, all the way Bush's presidency, presidents inherit the issues of previous presidents. So Adams inherited the issue of France and Great Britain being angry with each other. Because of that, Adams now had to deal with those issues. So that was a big deal. Adams inherited the war between Great Britain and France and whether the United States would get involved. So one of the things he dealt with was impressment. Now, as you read down here with Captain Jack Sparrow and the wire that why's the rum always gone? Well, the rum's always gone because I'm drinking the rum. All right, Jack Sparrow. Impressment means the seizing of ships and forcing the sailors into their navy. So all along the ocean coast, along Europe, if there were American ships that were going to France, the British intercepted them. If there were American ships going to Britain, French ships intercepted them. And so American ships were being pillaged, goods were being stolen, and American soldiers and sailors were being forced to join the military. Well, why wouldn't they just say they don't want to join the Navy? Well, if you refuse to join the Navy, we'll just throw you overboard. Okay, yeah, all right, that's a good incentive. I'll join the Navy. So that was the issue there. Now, when Americans were hearing about these ships that were seized by the French and the British, it's not like they heard that these ships were being seized overnight. Now, Washington also said he wanted to remain neutral with all this stuff. Well, Adams was a little bit more of a hawk, Hawk, in terms of being president. He firmly believed that having a strong arm and being strong-willed and being tough on people, that was the way to go. And so he actually threatened to go to war with France because France was seizing so many American ships. Now, it says the third question, what was the purpose of the Alien and Sedition Acts passed by Adams because of the XYZ affair? Well, we got to know what the XYZ affair was first. In 1797, Adams was fed up with France seizing ships. So Adams sent 3 American ambassadors to go meet with Charles de Talleyrand. He was in charge in France at the time. And so as the 3 Americans went to France, they were met by 3 French guys. Now, these 3 French guys that met these 3 American guys never told them their names. The 3 Frenchmen said, you can call us Monsieur X, Monsieur Y, and Monsieur Z, as a way to say, like, we're not even going to tell you our names because this isn't even worth our time. So the 3 ambassadors, they never even got to meet Charles de Talleyrand, who was the leader of France. They met these guys X, Y, and Z, and they were furious because Mr. X, Mr. Y, and Mr. Z said, we want $250,000 right now just so you can discuss things with Talleyrand. And then also, you guys owe us. We helped you in your revolution. You owe us in our revolution. We want $10 million. Like, we sent the French soldiers to America to fight in the American Revolutionary War. And remember the French Revolution? Well, Americans didn't send American soldiers to help the French with their revolution. So the French were furious. The French were thinking to themselves, we need help. How come we help you, but y'all aren't helping us? We want $10 million. That infuriated the Americans. In fact, they never even met. They didn't pay it. And then they went back home, and Adams passed the Alien and Sedition Acts. I'm telling you, the coffee's not fun. These Alien and Sedition Acts were a way to punish France because of the XYZ affair. They basically said the following. The Alien Act. If anyone went from France, French people were allowed to be deported from the United States if they spoke out against the government. It also made citizenship more difficult for these French immigrants because the citizenship process wasn't hard. Now we're going to make it really hard. So that way it discourages French people from staying in America, from being in America, and it kind of punishes French people that want to move to America. The Sedition Act made it a crime to speak against the government. So if you said something negative against the government, especially if you were French, you were thrown in jail. That violates the First Amendment. Now, in the grand scheme of things, only a handful of people were arrested. But the fact that the Congress and the fact that John Adams were willing to say, hey, we're going to arrest people that speak negatively against the government, I mean, that's bold. That's a straight up threat to democracy. So that was a horrible thing for Adams. And in fact, Thomas Jefferson and people from the state of Kentucky and Virginia said that they were going to ignore those laws, that they weren't going to enforce the laws. And that's kind of like today marijuana laws. That yes, the federal government has laws against the use of marijuana, but some states don't enforce those laws. Now, the public response to the Alien and Sedition Acts, obviously horrible. And the last question I asked is, do you think Adams was a good or bad president? Do you think he did a good job as president? That's really opinionated. History puts him kind of in the middle as a president, but it's kind of not easy to compare him to other presidents because of what he dealt with and also because of how he dealt with the issues. So he's a controversial kind of guy. All right, I hope these answers provided insight and gave you the answers to your questions. You'll now begin reading about Thomas Jefferson. You'll answer his questions. The Thomas Jefferson questions are due by day 2. So blocks 2 and 4. Yours are due on Tuesday, whatever. They're due day 2. Your questions are due day 2. Enjoy.